the 12 powerful Titans of Greek mythology. Phoebe, the Titaness of Radiance and Prophecy. And that is the end of the 12 Titans, Chapter 1, the birth of Phoebe, the radiant Titaness in the time before gods, when the cosmos itself still trembled with the first echoes of creation. The Titans emerged in ancient beings who embodied the very elements of existence. Among them was Phoebe, a Titaness unlike any other. She was not the Titan of sky or sea or earth, but of something far more elusive, radiance and prophecy. From the moment of her birth, Phoebe was destined to guide, to illuminate, and to weave the threads of foresight into the tapestry of destiny, the cosmic dawn. Phoebe was born of Uranus, the sky, and Gaia, the earth, like her 11 Titan siblings. Her arrival was marked by a shimmering glow that spread across the heavens, where her brothers and sisters embodied raw, tangible forces, like Oceanus, who ruled the seas, or Hyperion, who carried the essence of light itself. Phoebe's gift was subtler, yet no less powerful. She carried within her the clarity of vision, the brilliance of understanding, and the unshakable calm of prophecy. As the stories tell, when Phoebe opened her eyes for the first time, the stars themselves flickered as though responding to her gaze. It was said that she could see not only the world as it was, but the shadows of what might be. Her very presence gave order to uncertainty, turning chaos into a path, a pattern, a possibility. The radiant Titaness, Phoebe's siblings, quickly learned to respect her strange and luminous aura. Themis, her sister, embodied divine law, but often sought Phoebe's counsel before rendering judgment. Hyperion, master of celestial light, acknowledged that Phoebe's radiance was of another kind, one that shone inward, piercing through illusions and unveiling truths hidden even to the Titans themselves. Her glow was not a blinding brilliance like the midday sun, but a gentle illumination like the silver of dawn before Apollo's chariot. This radiance was not of the body, but of the spirit, and it drew others toward her. To mortals who would one day learn of her name, she became a symbol of wisdom, of guidance, and of light in the darkness, the gift of prophecy. It was said that Phoebe inherited her prophetic gifts from her grandmother, Nyx, the primordial goddess of night, whose whispers carried secrets across the dark veil of existence. Phoebe's visions came to her in dreams, in sudden bursts of clarity, and in the silence between heartbeats. Unlike the violent storms of her brother Ku's intellect, Phoebe's prophecies were calm, deliberate, and undeniable. When she spoke, even the proud Titans fell silent. She warned them of dangers unseen, of futures yet unwritten, and of the choices that would shape the destiny of gods and men alike. In her youth, she foretold the rise of Cronus as king among Titans, and later, the downfall that would follow when his own children rose against him. Though her words were often veiled in mystery, time always proved them true. Phoebe and the stars. Phoebe's bond with the night sky was unbreakable. She would walk beneath the firmament, gazing upward as though reading an ancient scroll written in starlight. Where others saw only patterns of brightness, Phoebe saw stories, fates, and warnings. The constellations whispered to her, their positions mapping out the movements of destiny itself. Mortals, when they came into existence, would learn to look to the stars for guidance, a practice rooted in the gifts Phoebe bestowed. She taught them to read the heavens, to see omens in the turning of the constellations. Though the art of prophecy would later be carried on by her descendants, such as Apollo at Delphi, it was Phoebe who first wove starlight into foresight, the radiant mother. Phoebe was not only a Titaness of prophecy, but also of legacy. She would one day become the grandmother of Apollo, the god of prophecy and light, and Artemis, goddess of the hunt and the moon, through her daughters, Leto and Asteria. Phoebe's gifts would flow into Olympus itself, ensuring that her influence would never fade, even as the reign of the Titans gave way to the age of the Olympians. The birth of Phoebe was more than the arrival of another Titan. It was the dawn of foresight, the awakening of divine wisdom. Her story would shape not only the fate of her kin, but also the lives of gods and mortals yet unborn. To know Phoebe was to understand that destiny itself was not fixed, but illuminated, revealed in glimpses, like the first rays of light breaking through the veil of night. Closing of Chapter 1. Thus begins the tale of Phoebe, Titaness of Radiance and Prophecy, the one who walked among the stars, who spoke the truths that none could deny, and whose descendants would inherit her luminous gift. Born in the shadow of Uranus and Gaia, she carried within her not the force of destruction nor the hunger for power, but the brilliance of foresight. And in a world soon to be torn apart by betrayal, war, and the clash of generations, her gift would become more vital than ever. Chapter 2. Phoebe and the Council of Themis. The Titans were not only embodiments of cosmic forces, they were also counselors, rulers, and keepers of order in a universe still forming its laws. Among them, two sisters stood apart: Themis, the Titaness of divine law, and Phoebe, the Titaness of radiance and prophecy. Each was powerful in her own right, yet it was in their union that wisdom became unshakable. For one represented the eternal laws that bound the cosmos, and the other the foresight that illuminated the path ahead. Sisters of balance, though the Titans were many, not all were close. Some were bound by rivalry, others by alliances of necessity. But between Phoebe and Themis, there existed a bond untainted by envy or conflict, where Themis was stern, unyielding, and often solemn in her decrees. Phoebe was luminous, compassionate, and contemplative. Their temperaments balanced one another, creating harmony where chaos might otherwise reign. In the halls of the Titans, disputes often broke out. Oceanus argued with Hyperion about the balance of sea and sun. Cronus clashed with his brothers about power and dominion. But when questions grew too great for mere strength or intellect, the Titans turned to Themis for judgment. And when Themis hesitated, as even law sometimes must, she would look to Phoebe for clarity, for Phoebe's sight stretched beyond the present moment, into shadows of what was yet to come. The first council, one such moment, came in the early reign of the Titans, before the seeds of rebellion were sown. Cronus, who had seized power from their father Uranus, sought to solidify his rule. Many of the Titans pledged loyalty, yet whispers of doubt spread like wind through the high mountains of Othrys. Cronus, though cunning, was uneasy. He summoned Themis, desiring a decree that would silence his doubters. Themis listened, but her heart was heavy, for though law bound her to uphold justice, she could not ignore that Cronus had risen through betrayal and blood. The order of the cosmos had shifted, and in her mind, the path forward was obscured. It was then that Phoebe, radiant with quiet insight, came to her side. "My sister Themis said, her voice like stone upon stone, the king demands a decree of loyalty. Yet I know not if such a law would uphold balance, or if it would only bind us tighter to ruin." Phoebe placed a hand upon Themis's shoulder, her touch warm as starlight. Law without foresight is a chain that drags us into darkness. Let me gaze into what lies ahead." She closed her eyes, and for a long moment, silence hung heavy in the chamber. Then she spoke, her words carrying the weight of inevitability. "Cronus will reign, but his reign shall not endure. From his own blood shall rise a force that will overthrow him. To bind the Titans now with oaths of loyalty is to blind us when the storm comes. Law must not be wielded as his shield, but as the foundation for what is to come." After Themis bowed her head, "Then I must decree with caution, for law is eternal, and if wielded wrongly, it may break us instead of bind us." And so, with Phoebe's counsel, Themis declared not absolute loyalty to Cronus, but an oath to uphold balance and justice in all things. It was a subtle defiance, one that Cronus accepted in pride, never realizing the weight of what had been denied him. Thus, the sisters together protected the future, even as the present marched toward ruin, a bond beyond power. From that day forward, Themis and Phoebe were seen as inseparable. When Themis stood in judgment, Phoebe often stood beside her, her radiance casting light upon the darkest doubts. And when Phoebe shared her prophecies, Themis gave them form, weaving them into decrees that preserved balance in a world teetering on chaos. Their partnership became legendary even among gods. Later ages would remember them not just as titans, but as embodiments of a higher truth that law and foresight together formed the pillars of wisdom. Without foresight, law could become blind tyranny. Without law, prophecy could descend into chaos. The prophecy of the sisters, there came another moment when their counsel shook the halls of Ethres. The young gods, the children of Cronus and Rheaber, yet unborn, but Phoebe foresaw their arrival. She dreamed of a girl swaddled in moonlight, and a boy crowned with the light of prophecy itself. These were visions of Artemis and Apollo, though their names were not yet known. When she shared this vision with Themis, the elder sister grew solemn. If this is true, then the order of the world will again be tested. For children born of Titans shall belong to a new age, one that will not bow to Cronus' dominion. Phoebe nodded. And it is not only their birth that is fated. They will carry our gifts forward. Apollo shall inherit the mantle of prophecy, and Artemis the silver light of the hunt. Through them, what is ours shall endure, even should we fall. Themis' eyes glimmered with something rare hope. Then let us guide the present, that the future may blossom as it must. Closing of Chapter 2. Thus the bond of Phoebe and Themis grew, shaping not only the fate of the Titans, but the destiny of the gods yet to come. Together, they stood as a beacon of wisdom, one radiant, one resolute. And though storms of betrayal and war loomed on the horizon, their counsel would remain a guiding light, a harmony of law and foresight echoing through the ages. Phoebe's gift was not only to see the future, but to ensure that when it came, it would not arrive unprepared. And with Themis beside her, the Titaness of Radiance was never alone in her vigil. Chapter 3. Phoebe and the gift of prophecy. To Apollo the Titans had shaped the first foundations of the cosmos, but even they knew their dominion was not eternal. Change was the one truth that no prophecy could escape. Phoebe, radiant and ever watchful, often gazed beyond the horizon of time, and in her visions she saw the coming of a new generation children who would bridge the age of Titans and Olympians. Among these children, one shone with a brilliance that rivaled even the sun. His name would be Apollo, a child of radiance, born to Leto daughter of the Titans Zeus and Phoebe, Apollo and his twin sister Artemis entered the world under circumstances of peril. Hera, queen of the gods and consort of Zeus, raged with jealousy at Leto's pregnancy and sent Python, the great serpent, to pursue her. Yet, despite Hera's wrath, the children were born, and in their cries, the cosmos trembled with a new resonance. Phoebe, though not present at the birth, felt it in the core of her being. She sensed the flare of divine radiance, a spark that echoed her own essence. "The light has come," she whispered to the stars, "and prophecy shall find its vessel." For Phoebe knew from the beginning that Apollo was not merely another god in the making. He was destined to become the harbinger of truth, the voice through which the hidden threads of fate would be revealed. The oracle's inheritance. As the twins grew, Phoebe visited Leto, her daughter, upon the sacred island of Delos, where Apollo and Artemis had been born. The island glowed with divine presence, though it was but a rocky outcrop in the sea. Phoebe's arrival was quiet, yet the waves lapped in reverence as she stepped onto its shores. Leto, weary but radiant in her own way, greeted her mother with humility. "My son," Leto said, presenting Apollo, "is restless with a fire I cannot quench. His gaze already seeks the horizon. And my daughter," she continued, glancing at Artemis, "moves with a stillness that belongs to the hunt and the moon." Phoebe knelt before Apollo, her eyes gleaming like silver fire. "Child of light," she said softly, "you bear within you a gift older than the Olympians, older than your father Zeus himself. You are destined to hear the whispers of fate as I once did. The sight of prophecy belongs to you." Apollo, though only a boy, looked upon Phoebe with a steady gaze, as though some part of him already understood. "If it is mine," he asked with a voice far beyond his years, "what must I do with it?" Phoebe smiled, her expression both tender and grave. "You must bear it with wisdom, for prophecy is a flame. It can warm, but it can also consume. To speak truth is a sacred duty, and the gods themselves will test you for it." The passing of the mantle. Phoebe had long served as custodian of one of the most sacred sites in all of creation, the Oracle of Delphi, a place where the earth's breath rose in fumes, carrying visions from the deep veins of fate. The shrine stood in her care, a place of radiance where seekers came to hear glimpses of what was yet to come. But in her visions, Phoebe had seen that Delphi would not remain hers forever. It was meant for another, one who would carry prophecy into the age of Olympians. Guiding Apollo by the hand, she brought him to the foot of Mount Parnassus, where the temple of the oracle shimmered with eternal fire. "This," she told him, "is Delphi. Here the voices of fate are strongest, for the navel of the world lies beneath. Long have I kept its counsel, but it is not mine to guard forever. The future belongs to you." Apollo trembled at the sight of the sacred place. The air was thick with unseen voices, the murmurs of destiny pressing against his mind. He turned to Phoebe, his youthful confidence flickering. "How can I hold such a burden? I am but a child." Phoebe placed her hand upon his brow, and at her touch, a warmth like starlight flooded him. "Because you are not merely a child, you are born of radiance and law, of foresight and endurance. In you, the old power finds a new voice. This is the inheritance I bestow upon you, the gift of prophecy. Guard it, wield it, and let it guide the gods when even Zeus falters." A test of sight before Apollo could accept this sacred mantle. Phoebe knew he must be tested, for prophecy was not a treasure to be simply given. it was a burden that demanded courage. "If you are to inherit Delphi," Phoebe told him, "you must first face the shadow that stalks it." That shadow was Python, the same serpent sent by Hera to torment Leto. The monstrous creature had long coiled itself around Delphi, choking the sacred fumes with venom, silencing the voices of fate. Even Phoebe had struggled against its presence, though her radiance kept it at bay. When Apollo heard this, he did not shrink back. His eyes, golden as dawn, blazed with resolve. "Then I will slay Python, for truth must not be bound." Phoebe nodded, though worry tugged at her heart. "Take care, child. The serpent is strong, born of Gaia herself. But know, this prophecy favors you. Trust in it, and your path will be clear, the dawn of Apollo's path." Armed with a bow of silver, crafted by Hephaestus, and arrows blessed by Phoebe's own radiance, Apollo confronted Python upon the slopes of Delphi. The battle shook the mountain, thunder rolling through the heavens as the serpent roared against the young god's defiance. Phoebe watched from afar, her heart pounding with both dread and pride. She saw in Apollo's struggle the echo of countless prophecies, that the new would always rise to challenge the old. At last, with a final arrow that burned with starlight, Apollo struck Python through the heart. The serpent fell, its coils unwinding across the sacred site. The fumes of Delphi rose once more, untainted, carrying with them the voices of fate. Apollo, breathless but unbroken, stood victorious. Phoebe descended to his side. "It is done," she said, her voice trembling with awe. "The oracle is free, and so are you. Delphi is yours, Apollo. Guard it well, for through it your voice shall guide kings, heroes, and even gods." Closing of chapter 3. From that moment, Phoebe passed to Apollo the mantle of prophecy. Though she remained radiant, her role as guardian of Delphi had ended. She was not diminished but fulfilled, for her purpose was never to hoard foresight, but to ensure its light carried forward. And in Apollo's hands, prophecy would blaze anew, a beacon for ages to come. As she looked upon her grandson, Phoebe felt both the weight of endings and the promise of beginnings. For the Titaness of Radiance had sown her gift into the heart of Olympus itself. And so the age of prophecy turned a page, its voice now singing in the golden chords of Apollo, god of light and truth. Chapter 4. The Radiance of Prophecy and the Wrath of Hera. The slaying of Python by Apollo marked a turning point in the cosmic order. No longer was prophecy bound beneath the coils of chaos and venom. Instead, the sacred oracle of Delphi had found a new master, young Apollo, radiant son of Leto and Zeus. Yet, even as Phoebe rejoiced in the fulfillment of her visions, she knew that the act had sown seeds of enmity. For the slaying of Python was not merely a battle against a beast, but a challenge to powers older than the Olympians themselves. And in Olympus, there was one who could not forgive: Hera, queen of the gods. Hera's fury awakens. When word of Python's death reached Hera, her fury was boundless. The serpent had been her instrument of vengeance against Leto, a shadow meant to keep the Titan's daughter in despair. Now, with Python destroyed, Hera's plans lay in ruin, and worse still, the child she despised had risen to glory. In her wrath, Hera summoned the winds of Olympus, her voice shaking the halls of heaven. "So this boy dares to defy me, this Titan-born whelp, shielded by his mother and emboldened by prophecy. Then let him feel the weight of my anger. Let prophecy itself betray him." Zeus, though lord of the skies, said nothing. He had seen the brilliance in Apollo's eyes and knew his son's destiny was not to be undone. Yet, even Zeus could not restrain Hera when her jealousy burned. Phoebe, however, foresaw Hera's anger before it struck. From the silver flame of her visions, she glimpsed storms rising around Delphi, a shadow of vengeance seeking to choke Apollo's light. The Titaness side, for she knew this too was part of the path. Prophecy was never without trial. A visit to Delphi. Phoebe descended once more to Delphi, where Apollo now stood as its guardian. The temple shone brighter than ever, its sacred fumes rising in steady streams, whispering truths that only Apollo could hear. The young god greeted his grandmother with joy, yet his brow was furrowed. "Why does the air tremble with unease, grandmother?" he asked. "Even as Delphi thrives, I feel storms pressing from beyond the mountains. Is it Hera's shadow?" Phoebe placed a gentle hand upon his shoulder. "You see clearly already, child. Hera does not forgive, and her anger burns hotter than fire. But remember this, prophecy is both shield and spear. Trust its whispers, and no storm will silence you." Apollo's eyes blazed with determination. "Then let her come. I will not falter. If she seeks to bind prophecy, I will speak it louder still." Phoebe smiled faintly, though in her heart she knew the danger was great. Prophecy could guide, but it could not always protect. The wrath of Hera was not to be taken lightly. Hera strikes at Delphi. One night, as the sacred fires of Delphi flickered beneath the stars, Hera unleashed her fury. Dark clouds swallowed the mountain, and thunder rolled, though no rain fell. From the storm emerged spectral hounds, beasts of shadow and venom, conjured from Hera's will. Their howls pierced the temple, shaking the sacred stones. Apollo rushed forward, bow in hand, loosing arrows of silver light. Each shot burned through the shadow beasts, but for every one that fell, two more rose. Hera's laughter echoed across the storm, cruel and triumphant. "So, child of Leto, you dare to steal the mantle of prophecy. You dare to slay my serpent. Then I will tear Delphi from you and bury its fumes forever." Phoebe stood firm, her radiance cutting through the darkness. She raised her hands, and the storm faltered at her light. "Enough, Hera," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of ages. "Prophecy does not belong to you, nor to vengeance. It belongs to fate, and fate has chosen Apollo." But Hera only snarled. "You meddle still, Titaness, though your age is gone. Do you think to defy me, Queen of Olympus?" Phoebe did not flinch. "I do not defy you. I obey what is greater than both of us. The threads of destiny cannot be severed, no matter how you rage." The vision of radiance as the battle raged. Phoebe saw a vision burn before her eyes. Apollo standing tall, crowned with laurel, his voice carrying prophecy across the ages. She saw kings bowing before him, heroes trembling at his words, and even Zeus himself seeking his counsel. The vision blazed brighter than the storm, and Phoebe knew what she must do. Turning to Apollo, she cried out above the thunder, "Claim your place, child. Let the light within you blaze, for only radiance can scatter shadow." At her words, Apollo's arrows glowed like miniature suns. He loosed them in a storm of fire, each one striking true. The shadow beasts shrieked and dissolved, the storm clouds split, and Hera's laughter faltered into silence. From the heavens, Hera's voice thundered one last time. "This is not the end, boy. I will see you humbled. The gods do not forgive insolence." And with that, the storm withdrew, leaving Delphi scarred but unbroken. Aftermath and resolve. Apollo lowered his bow, his chest heaving, his face alight with triumph and fury. "She will never stop," he said. "No matter what I do, Hera will always seek to silence me." Phoebe approached him, her expression calm, though her heart ached. "Yes, child, she will test you again and again. That is the burden of greatness. But remember this, prophecy does not exist to please the gods. It exists to reveal the truth, whether they wish to hear it or not." Apollo bowed his head, absorbing her words. At last, he spoke with quiet strength. "Then I will speak the truth, always. If even Zeus trembles at it, so be it. Prophecy will not die while I live." Phoebe's eyes shone with pride. She saw in him not only a boy, but the god he was destined to become, the voice of clarity, the radiance of truth. Her purpose, long ago glimpsed in the fires of foresight, was fulfilled. The mantle had passed. Closing of Chapter 4. Thus ended Hera's first great assault on Delphi. Though her vengeance was not quenched, Apollo had proven his strength, and Phoebe had secured his path. From that day forth, Delphi became more than a shrine. It became the eternal seat of prophecy, where mortals and gods alike would seek the light of truth. Phoebe, Titaness of Radiance, watched as her grandson stood unshaken amidst the fading storm, and in that moment she knew the age of prophecy had truly dawned. Chapter 5. The Laurel Crown and the Eternal Flame of Delphi. The storm had passed, but Delphi still bore the scars of Hera's wrath. Stones were blackened, sacred pillars cracked, and the fumes that rose from the chasm seemed weaker than before, as though shaken by divine anger. Yet, in the temple's heart, Apollo stood victorious, his silver bow gleaming in the faint starlight. Beside him, Phoebe watched, her radiance soft but unwavering. This was a moment that demanded more than victory, demanded consecration. For if Apollo was to guard Delphi against all who threatened it, he must not merely hold the oracle, he must become one with it, the counsel of the Titans. Though many Titans had fallen or faded into shadow after the Titanomachy, some still lingered in the quiet edges of the cosmos. Phoebe called upon them, not to defy Olympus, but to sanctify the new keeper of prophecy. By moonlight they gathered in Delphi's sacred valley, Themis, guardian of divine law, Mnemosyne, keeper of memory, Kus, once master of intellect. Each came not as ruler, but as witness. "The world has changed," Themis said gravely, her voice like the balance of scales. "But prophecy must endure. If it falters, the order of gods and mortals alike will crumble." Mnemosyne added, "Let memory be bound to him, so that truth shall not be forgotten with time." Phoebe raised her hand, silver light streaming forth. "Then let us weave together the crown that marks him. Not of gold, not of iron, but of laurel, the tree that knows no death, evergreen in all seasons." And so the Titans agreed. Together they shaped the laurel crown, the emblem of prophecy and poetic truth, a symbol that would rest forever on the brow of Apollo, the birth of the laurel. But first, the laurel itself had to be born. Phoebe guided Apollo into the forested slopes of Parnassus, where shadows still whispered with the memory of Python. There, she revealed to him a young tree, fragile yet luminous, its leaves shimmering faintly as though touched by starlight. "This tree is no ordinary gift," Phoebe explained. "It was born from sacrificed Daphne, the maiden who fled your desire, transformed to escape. She gave her form to the laurel, so that purity might endure even against pursuit. Apollo's gaze softened, for though the story pained him, he felt reverence for Daphne's choice. He touched the laurel's branches, and the leaves seemed to tremble at his touch. "Then let her sacrifice not be in vain," he whispered. "Let the laurel be the crown of prophecy, of poetry, and of truth eternal." Phoebe nodded. "So it shall be. And with this crown you shall be bound to Delphi as its guardian flame." The anointing at Delphi, the Titans gathered once more at the temple. Phoebe lifted the laurel crown, its leaves glowing with a silver-golden light, as though reflecting both moon and sun. The ground trembled. From the chasm of Delphi, the fumes rose higher, thicker, and brighter, as if awakened anew. The eternal flame at the altar blazed to life, stronger than it had ever been, casting shadows that danced like spirits across the stone walls. "From this day forth," Phoebe proclaimed, her voice echoing across the mountains, "Apollo is not merely the slayer of Python, nor the son of Leto. He is the laurel-crowned, the keeper of prophecy, the voice of radiance that even gods must heed." Apollo felt the fire burn within him. No longer was prophecy something he borrowed, was part of his being. The voices of the oracle flowed through him effortlessly, clear as a song, unshaken by shadow or deceit. "Hear us, watching eyes." But high above Olympus, Hera's gaze remained fixed on Delphi. Though she could not strike again so soon, her jealousy festered. "So they crown him as their prophet," she muttered. "So they honor him with symbols that should belong to me, queen of the gods. Very well, if I cannot silence him, I shall twist his prophecies to ruin those who hear them." Her words slithered into the night like serpents. For Hera understood one truth. Prophecy was not always salvation. Often it was doom. And the more Apollo spoke, the more mortals and even gods would tremble at the burdens of truth. Phoebe, however, foresaw this danger. She knew that prophecy, like fire, could illuminate, but also burn. Yet it was not her place to protect mortals from its flame. Her task was complete. She had passed on the gift, and Apollo must now bear its weight. The eternal flame, as days passed, Delphi flourished under Apollo's guardianship. Kings, heroes, and wanderers came from distant lands, climbing the mountain to seek the voice of destiny. Each left with words that stirred both hope and dread, for prophecy was never simple. In the temple, the eternal flame burned steadily. Phoebe often returned to watch it, her eyes calm, her heart at peace. She knew her time was waning. The age of Titans had long ended, and her radiance would fade into memory. But she had given the world what it most needed, a light that no storm could extinguish. On one such night, as the moon rode high, Apollo approached her. "Grandmother," he said softly, "will you remain with me always, to guide me?" Phoebe smiled, her silver hair glimmering like starlight. "No, child. My light was only ever meant to prepare the way. Yours must shine alone. But when you hear the whispers in the flame, when you feel the weight of truth heavy upon your heart, remember, you are never truly alone. For prophecy itself is eternal, and so long as you bear it with honor, I am with you." Closing of Chapter 5. With the laurel crown upon his brow and the eternal flame blazing at his side, Apollo was no longer merely a victor. He was a guardian, a prophet, and a voice of truth. The Titans who blessed him faded into memory, their task fulfilled, their gifts sealed. For in Apollo, her legacy lived on, radiant, unbreakable, eternal. The world of gods and mortals alike would forever turn to Delphi, where laurel leaves whispered and flames burned without end. And above it all, Phoebe's radiance lingered, unseen but never forgotten. Chapter 6. The fading radiance of the Titans. The eternal flame of Delphi burned with renewed brilliance, its golden tongues reaching upward as if to touch the very stars. Apollo stood crowned with laurel, radiant as the sun, the new bearer of prophecy. Mortals flocked to him with awe, and even the Olympian gods watched with respect or envy. But in the shadows of this triumph, Phoebe knew what the others did not. Her radiance was waning. Each day, her glow grew dimmer, as though the heavens themselves were calling her back into the realm of fading Titans. The burden of prophecy, Phoebe sat alone at the edge of Mount Parnassus, overlooking valleys bathed in moonlight. Her silver light shimmered faintly upon the rocks, but where once it had rivaled Selene's glow, now it flickered like a dying candle. Themis, her sister, appeared beside her, her form steady and unshaken. "You feel it, don't you? The weight of time pressing upon you." Phoebe nodded softly. "Yes, when I passed the laurel crown to Apollo, I felt a tether cut within me. Prophecy no longer anchors itself in my being. It flows through him now. The age of Titans is ending." Themis's voice carried no pity, only truth. "It is the way of things. We Titans once ruled, but the cosmos shifts. Our children and grandchildren must take our place. Apollo's star will rise, while ours must fade into myth. But will they remember us?" Phoebe asked quietly, her eyes glistening. "Will mortals and gods remember the hands that shaped the path they now walk? Or will we become whispers, forgotten as the wind in the trees?" Themis placed a hand upon her shoulder. "Memory lives, sister, so long as stories are told, and prophecy itself will carry your name, for you gave it form." A visit from Apollo one evening. Apollo approached Phoebe in the quiet sanctuary. The laurel crown gleamed on his brow, and the flames reflected in his eyes. Yet beneath his radiance there was sorrow. "Grandmother," he said gently, "I feel your light diminishing. Tell me it is not true." Phoebe smiled faintly, her silver hair catching the glow of the eternal flame. "It is true, my child. My task is complete. The threads of prophecy no longer weave through me. They belong to you now." Apollo's voice trembled. "But I am not ready to lose you. Your wisdom has guided me through shadows. Without you, will I not falter?" Phoebe's hand brushed his cheek tenderly. "You will falter, yes. All who bear prophecy do. But you will also rise. Remember, Apollo, that prophecy is not perfection. It is the burden of truth, a burden heavier than Olympus itself. Hold fast to that, and you will never truly be alone." The morning of the Titans' word spread among the surviving Titans that Phoebe's radiance was dimming. Mnemosyne came from her hidden halls, bearing with her the weight of memories untold. Coups, weary but steadfast, offered words of intellect and farewell. Even Tethys, the flowing mother, arrived with rivers swelling in sorrow. They gathered around Phoebe at Delphi, forming a circle as they had in ancient days before the Olympians rose. For one final time, the Titans stood united, not as rulers, not as warriors, but as kin. "You carried prophecy when none else could," Mnemosyne said, her voice heavy with reverence. "Without you, the voices of the cosmos would have fallen silent in the Titanmachi. You preserved the path for what would come," Coups added. "You showed us that wisdom is not only knowledge, but foresight, the courage to see what others refuse to see." Phoebe bowed her head, humbled. And yet, it was not for me to keep. Prophecy was always meant to move forward, to live beyond one bearer. It belongs now to Apollo, and through him to the ages, the final radiance. That night, Phoebe ascended to the peak of Mount Parnassus one last time. The stars above shimmered brightly, and the moon hung low, bathing the world in silver light. Apollo, silent and reverent, stood beside her. "Look upon the sky, child," Phoebe said, her voice soft yet steady. "Every star, every constellation each, is a prophecy of its own. They shine not for themselves, but to guide those who wander in darkness. That is what you must be, not a god for yourself, but a light for others." As she spoke, her glow brightened once more, burning with a brilliance that rivaled dawn. The Titans who had gathered bowed their heads, for they knew this was her last radiance, her final gift to the world. Phoebe lifted her hands to the heavens. "I return what I have borrowed. I leave not in despair, but in peace. For truth never dies, it only changes its bearer." Her form shimmered, dissolving into silver starlight that drifted upward into the sky. As her radiance faded, the stars above seemed to blaze brighter, as though welcoming her essence into their eternal company. The silence after, when dawn broke, Phoebe was gone. The sanctuary felt emptier, yet the eternal flame burned stronger than ever. Mortals arrived at Delphi, and when they knelt before Apollo, the laurel crown shone with a divine brilliance, proof that prophecy still lived. Apollo, though sorrowful, felt a calm resolve settle upon him. His grandmother's words echoed within his heart. Prophecy is a burden, but it is also light. Themis turned to the remaining Titans. "Another has faded. Soon we too will join her, but we must not grieve. For so long as Olympus endures, so long as mortals seek truth, Phoebe will never be forgotten." And so, though Phoebe's form was gone, her radiance lived on in every whisper of the oracle, in every laurel crown worn by poets and prophets, in every flame that burned against the dark. Phoebe, Titaness of Radiance and prophecy, had passed into myth, yet her legacy was eternal. Chapter 7. The Trials of Apollo's Prophecy, the Sanctuary of Delphi. Once crowned by the fading radiance of Phoebe, now pulsed with the golden fire of Apollo, the laurel crown rested upon his brow, the eternal flame reflected in his eyes, and the Pythia, his chosen oracles, sat inhaling the fumes that rose from the sacred chasm. Mortals and kings alike journeyed from distant lands to seek his guidance. Yet, even as the god of prophecy took his place, the weight of Phoebe's legacy pressed heavily upon him. Prophecy, as she had warned, was not perfection, but burden, and soon Apollo would learn what it meant to carry truth that mortals and even gods might not wish to hear. The first petitioners, the first trial, came with the kings of Greece. One sought victory in war, another begged for peace, while a third demanded prosperity for his people. Apollo listened through the lips of his oracle, his words carrying the cadence of divine truth. To the one who longs for war, your armies shall march, but return in ashes. To the one who craves peace, your people will know it, but at the cost of freedom. And to the one who desires prosperity, gold will flow like rivers, yet it will poison the hearts of your kin. The kings left in turmoil, unable to accept the double-edged nature of the prophecy. They wanted certainty, but Apollo gave them truth that revealed not just outcomes, but consequences. As they departed, Apollo whispered to himself, "So this is the trial. not foretelling, but enduring the anger of those who do not wish to hear the challenge of mortals. In the days that followed, mortals came in endless streams. Some offered gifts of gold and ivory, others sacrifices of oxen and goats. They bowed before the flame, hoping for answers that would soothe their fears. But prophecy is not a bomb, it is a mirror, and mirrors do not flatter. One farmer asked if his harvest would be plentiful. The Pythia spoke, "The soil will yield, but greed will devour the fruit. Share what you reap, or your fields shall wither." The farmer left in anger, cursing Apollo's name. Another woman asked if her child would grow strong and noble. The Pythia replied, "He shall grow strong indeed, yet his strength will turn against you if you raise him in pride." The woman fled in tears, unable to bear the weight of truth. Apollo stood silent, his gaze heavy upon the mountains. They come for comfort, but prophecy offers no comfort, only clarity. "How did you endure this, grandmother?" But Phoebe's voice no longer answered. The trial of gods, even the gods tested him. Athena came first, her wisdom sharp as her spear. "Apollo," she said, "tell me of Olympus's fate. Will wisdom guide it, or will pride undo us all?" The Pythia spoke with trembling lips. "Wisdom shall rise, but it will be bound by hubris. Even the wise cannot escape the shadows of arrogance." Athena frowned, yet accepted the truth with dignity. But when Ares came, demanding to know if war would make him eternal, the prophecy was harsher still. "War will echo your name, but your glory shall fade when mortals tire of blood." Ares stormed away in fury, cursing Apollo's sanctuary, and then came Hera, queen of the gods, her eyes cold as marble. "Tell me, bright one, will the reign of Zeus endure, or shall it crumble beneath his flaws?" The flame burned high, and the Pythia's voice deepened with divine force. "The reign of Zeus shall endure, but not without trials that shake the heavens. His flaws will be his shadow, yet even shadows serve the light." Hera's lips curved into a bitter smile, a prophecy veiled in riddles. "You speak like your grandmother, truth wrapped in mystery. Perhaps Olympus has not lost her entirely." The weight of legacy, each prophecy drained Apollo's spirit, for each carried not only truth but consequence. Mortals accused him of cruelty, gods accused him of riddling words, and even his priests grew wary of his relentless honesty. Alone at night, Apollo knelt before the eternal flame. "Phoebe, how did you endure centuries of this weight? To know and to speak, but never to be thanked. To give light and be hated for its brightness." And in the silence, a soft breeze stirred, carrying with it a whisper, not a voice, but an echo of memory. "Truth is not for gratitude, my child. It is for guidance. Carry it, though it burns you, for light must burn to shine." Apollo closed his eyes. Tears, rare for a god, traced his golden cheeks. "Then I will bear it, not for myself, but for them, the trial of self." But prophecy tested not only his resolve against others, it tested his own heart. For in visions, Apollo began to see shadows of his own fate, loves that would end in tragedy, pride that would lead him astray, choices that would wound gods and mortals alike. Could he change them? Or was even the god of prophecy bound by the very threads he wove? One night, Artemis, his twin sister, found him troubled beneath the stars. "You are restless, brother," she said softly. "I see too much," Apollo admitted. "I see paths that lead to sorrow, even for myself. If prophecy cannot save me, then what is its worth? Artemis placed a hand upon his shoulder. Its worth is not in saving, but in preparing. The future cannot always be changed, but it can be faced with courage. That is what grandmother taught us, and that is what you must remember. Apollo's gaze lifted to the stars' constellations shaped by the hands of Crius, glowing with eternal fire. He breathed deeply. Then I will face it. I will not hide from the truth, even if it wounds me. The rising oracle, as the years passed, the sanctuary of Delphi grew into the heart of prophecy for all of Greece. Kings and heroes journeyed there before wars, voyages, and great undertakings. They came not because the truth was easy, but because it was inescapable. Through trials of mortals, gods, and himself, Apollo grew into the bearer of prophecy, not merely by inheritance, but by endurance. He understood now why Phoebe's radiance had waned, for prophecy was not light freely given, but light consumed by those who sought it, and yet he bore it with dignity. For though prophecy burned, it also illuminated, closing vision. One twilight, as Apollo watched the sun sink beneath the horizon, he thought he saw Phoebe standing upon the mountain's peak, her silver hair glowing like the first stars of night. And with that vision, Apollo rose, more resolute than ever. For though the trials of prophecy would never end, he now carried them not as a burden, but as a calling. The radiance of Phoebe had not faded, had transformed, living on in the god who bore her legacy. Chapter 8. The shadows of prophecy. The sanctuary of Delphi burned with firelight as night cloaked the mountains. Apollo stood upon the marble steps, his golden hair glinting in the torch's glow. Yet shadows gathered all around him, shadows, not of darkness, but of doubt. For prophecy, though radiant, also cast the longest shadows, whispers of rebellion. Among mortals, unrest brewed. Some who had received dire prophecies cursed Apollo, declaring his words as curses rather than warnings. They whispered, "What if the god of prophecy does not foretell, but creates the very doom he speaks?" In distant cities, statues of Apollo were toppled, and temples desecrated. "He sows fear," they cried. "He breaks men's spirits before their battles begin." Apollo watched these events unfold through visions in the sacred flame. His heart ached. They do not understand. I do not weave their fati, only unveil it. But truth, he realized, was a double-edged sword. To reveal it was to risk blame for its pain. The wrath of kings, the greatest shadow, came when King Agrios of Thessaly arrived at Delphi. Tall, fierce, his armor blackened by soot, he approached the oracle not with reverence, but with rage. "You foretold my army's defeat," he roared, his voice echoing through the marble halls. "And so defeat came, because my men's spirits faltered, believing your cursed words. You are no prophet, you are the architect of ruin." The Pythia trembled as she inhaled the fumes, Apollo speaking through her lips. "King Agrios, your defeat was not of my making. Pride led you into battle against the will of the gods. No prophecy can change what arrogance has already written," but the king would not hear it. Sword drawn, he struck down the offerings upon the altar, shouting, "If gods bring only despair, then gods deserve no throne among us." Only the sudden flash of Apollo's presence, his form blazing like the sun, saved the sanctuary. The king staggered back, blinded by the god's fury. "Foolish mortal," Apollo thundered. "Would you destroy the truth so you may dwell in ignorance? Better blind than faithless, for blindness may still find light." The king fled in terror, yet the seeds of rebellion spread, and with them, shadows deepened. Discord among the gods, but mortals were not the only ones to doubt. On Olympus itself, murmurs spread. Ares sneered. Apollo weakens mortals with his riddles. What use is a god whose gift saps the courage of men? Hera whispered to Zeus, prophecy breeds discontent, my husband. Even kings rise against it. Perhaps Delphi's flame should be dimmed. Even Hermes, clever and swift, raised questions. Brother, is truth always worth the cost? A lie, well spoken, may strengthen hearts where truth only shatters them. Apollo stood before the council of gods, his golden light burning, yet his voice heavy with restraint. Do you not see? Prophecy is not my gift alone. It is the thread woven by the Moirai, revealed through me. If you wish it silenced, then you wish to silence fate itself. Zeus, thundering in judgment, declared, prophecy shall remain. Yet beware, my sun shadows gather where your light shines too brightly. If you cannot master them, even Delphi may fall. A vision of darkness. One night, as Apollo gazed into the sacred flame, he saw a vision unlike any before. The temple stood in ruins. The Pythia lay silent, her lips sealed by death, and the flame, his eternal flame, was extinguished. In its place stood a figure cloaked in shadow, eyes burning with defiance. The voice echoed, prophecy has fallen, truth is slain, and silence reigns. Apollo staggered back, his heart seized with dread. Was this a glimpse of what was to come, or a warning of what might yet be avoided? He sought Phoebe in the vision, hoping for her guiding radiance. But the stars above remained cold and distant, her voice lost to the silence. Counsel of Artemis. It was Artemis, his twin, who found him wandering the slopes of Parnassus, burdened with doubt. You are troubled, brother, she said, her silver bow glinting in the moonlight. Apollo's voice was low. I have seen Delphi destroyed, the flame extinguished. Tell me, sister, is it fate that cannot be altered, or a shadow that I might yet banish? Artemis laid a hand upon his shoulder. Perhaps it is both. Perhaps the shadow is not in the vision, but in you. You fear rejection, and so you see destruction. Yet you forget, prophecy is not meant to shield the temple, but to guide the soul. If the temple falls, truth will still endure. Her words were gentle, but they pierced his heart. Perhaps, he realized, the true trial was not the hatred of mortals or the doubts of gods. Perhaps it was the fear within himself that he, the radiant god, might one day be consumed by his own light. The shadow within that night, Apollo returned to Delphi, his form dimmed, his radiance shrouded. He sat beside the Pythia, who slept in her chamber. For once, he spoke not as a god, but as a weary soul. I have given them truth, and they call me cruel. I have given them clarity, and they call me cursed. What if they are right? What if truth is nothing but a shadow that blinds more than it guides? In the silence, the sacred flame flickered, and within its wavering glow, Apollo thought he saw Phoebe standing tall, her silver eyes piercing through him. Truth is neither shadow nor light, child. It is both. To reveal it is to invite both hope and despair. That is why it is divine. The vision faded, but her words remained. And with them, Apollo felt the weight of his shadow, but also its necessity. Closing resolve, when dawn broke, pilgrims once again gathered at Delphi. Some came with hope, others with fear. Apollo stood unseen, watching as the Pythia inhaled the fumes and spoke his words. The shadows had not vanished, but now, he no longer sought to banish them. For he understood, prophecy was not meant to erase shadow, but to reveal it, so that those who sought the light might find their way. And so Apollo embraced both his burden and his gift, knowing that the shadows of prophecy would forever follow him, but also that within them the radiance of Phoebe still glowed. Chapter 9. The fall and renewal of Delphi. The sun was high over Parnassus when the first tremors shook the earth. Pilgrims at Delphi screamed as columns quivered and sacred vessels toppled. The bronze tripod of the oracle rang like a bell before crashing to the floor. The sacred flame flickered, struggling against an unseen wind. Apollo, radiant as ever, rushed to the sanctuary. His golden presence steadied the trembling temple, but in his heart he knew this was the shadow he had foreseen. The serpent of silence from the chasm beneath the temple came a hiss, deep and terrible. A monstrous serpent, black-scaled and vast, slithered forth. Its eyes burned with cold fire, its tongue forked like lightning. Unlike Python, whom Apollo had slain long ago, this creature bore no fleshly hunger. It was the serpent of silence, born from mortal denial and divine doubt. The beast roared. Prophecy binds us no longer. Silence shall reign where truth once spoke. With each word, the Pythia gasped, her breath stolen, her voice choked. The sacred fumes dissipated into nothingness. Without them, prophecy faltered. Apollo drew his bow, golden arrows gleaming. I ended Python. I will end you. But the serpent only laughed, a sound like crumbling stone. You cannot slay what lives in every doubt, every fear. I am the silence within those who refuse your truth. The fall of the sanctuary, the serpent coiled around the temple, crushing its marble walls. Statues of gods tumbled, shattering into dust. Pilgrims fled in terror, crying that Delphi's glory had ended. The sacred flame sputtered, then went out. Darkness swept across the sanctuary. Though the sun blazed in the sky, Apollo fell to his knees before the extinguished fire, anguish burning in his chest. No, the flame cannot die. This was the gift of Phoebe, the light of truth for all generations. The serpent's shadow loomed over him. Truth dies as easily as hope. The world desires silence more than radiance. Look upon your sanctuary. God of prophecy is nothing but ruin. For a moment, even Apollo wavered. Was the beast right? Had mortals' rejection and the gods' doubts birthed a fate no light could pierce? The radiance remembered. As the serpent's coils tightened, a memory stirred in Apollo's heart, the voice of Phoebe, radiant and eternal. Truth is neither shadow nor light, child, it is both. To reveal, it is to invite both hope and despair. That is why it is divine. Apollo's despair turned to resolve. Rising to his feet, he cast aside his bow. Instead, he raised his hand toward the extinguished flame. Phoebe, grandmother, Titaness of Radiance, guide me once more. If silence seeks to swallow prophecy, then let your light ignite it anew. From the heavens, the stars stirred, though it was still day. A single silver ray fell upon the broken altar. The flame leaped back to life, not golden, but silver bright, radiant as starlight. The serpent recoiled, hissing in pain. The battle of light and silence. The fight raged across Delphi. Apollo's arrows blazed with silver fire, each shot piercing the serpent's shadowy coils. Yet for every wound, the beast split, birthing to more heads, each hissing, silence is stronger than truth. The temple quaked. Mortals and even lesser gods despaired. But Apollo remembered Artemis's counsel. Prophecy was not meant to erase shadow, but to reveal it. He lowered his bow and stood unarmed, bathed in both sunlight and starlight. If you are silence, then speak your truth. Show the world what you are. The serpent lunged, its jaws wide. But as it struck, Apollo's radiance did not resist it, illuminated. The beast shrieked as its body turned transparent, its scales nothing more than shadows cast by mortal doubt. The more light revealed, the weaker it became, until finally the serpent dissolved into smoke, vanishing into the chasm from which it came. The renewal of Delphi's silence lifted. The Pythia gasped, her voice returning as the fumes once more swirled around her. The sacred flame burned higher than ever, its silver-gold radiance dancing across the marble. The sanctuary, though scarred, still stood. Pilgrims knelt, weeping, as Apollo appeared in his full glory. His voice was steady, resolute. Prophecy does not bring despair, reveals the path hidden by shadow. If mortals fear the truth, so be it. But Delphi shall never fall to silence. For even in the darkest night, the stars still shine. The people lifted their voices in praise, not just of Apollo, but of Phoebe, whose starlight had renewed the flame. Offerings poured into the temple, and Delphi's renown spread greater than ever before. A lesson etched in light that night. Apollo sat before the flame, its glow reflected in his eyes. Artemis joined him, silent as the moon above. "You saw the temple fall," she said softly. "I did," Apollo replied, "and it fell. But it rose again not because I fought, but because I remembered." "Remembered Phoebe," Artemis said. Apollo nodded. "Her radiance endures in me. Prophecy will always be shadowed, always doubted. But it will also always burn, so long as there is light to reveal the truth." They sat together, sun and moon, beside the eternal flame. And high above, among the stars, Phoebe watched her prophecy fulfilled, her radiance eternal. Chapter 10. The Eternal Flame of Prophecy. The sacred flame of Delphi flickered gently in the midnight air, silver and gold interwoven, as though the heavens themselves had bent down to bless the sanctuary. Though the temple walls bore scars from the serpent's assault, the light shone stronger than ever before, a symbol of prophecy's endurance. Apollo stood silently before the altar, the echoes of battle still fresh in his heart. He knew that this victory was not his alone, it was the legacy of Phoebe, who had entrusted him with the power to reveal truth. The gathering of God's word of Delphi's renewal spread quickly across Olympus. One by one, the gods came to witness the miracle. Athena marveled at the flame, saying, "This is no ordinary fire, carries wisdom from beyond time." Hermes, playful as ever, touched the air around it. It hums like music, a voice without words. Even stern Hera, rarely generous with praise, admitted the Titaness Phoebe lives on in this light. She has woven eternity into prophecy. But Zeus, ruler of Olympus, was the one whose gaze lingered longest. His thunderous voice broke the silence. "Once, I feared the Titans and their power. Yet Phoebe has shown that not all Titan legacies are chains of destruction. She did not fight for dominion or war, Father. She gave her radiance so that we might guide mortals with truth." Zeus raised his hand, and lightning struck the sky, not in wrath, but in blessing. "So be it. Delphi shall forever stand as the flame of prophecy, a bridge between gods and mortals." The whisper of Phoebe that night, as the gods departed, Apollo lingered by the flame. Exhausted, he drifted into sleep at the foot of the altar. In his dream, a familiar presence embraced him, the cool, radiant glow of starlight. Phoebe appeared, not as a Titaness chained in defeat, but as a luminous figure, crowned with silver light. "My child," she whispered, "you have carried my gift beyond what even I foresaw. The serpent of silence was not your enemy, but your teacher. From shadow, you learned that prophecy is not to banish darkness, but to illuminate it." Apollo lowered his head. Yet prophecy remains fragile. Mortals doubt, gods waver, and silence always lurks. Phoebe smiled. "That is why it endures. Prophecy is not a weapon to conquer, it is a flame to tend. It must flicker, for in its flickering, it teaches patience, resilience, and faith." As she spoke, her radiance sank into the flame, becoming one with it. "I will no longer stand apart. My light is now eternal within Delphi. Whenever the flame shines, so too shall Phoebe." Mortals and the flame. When Apollo awoke, dawn had broken. Already, pilgrims had gathered, their footsteps echoing on the marble. Word of the temple's survival had drawn them from distant landscanes seeking guidance, mothers praying for their children, and wanderers yearning for destiny. The Pythia sat upon the tripod, her voice renewed, her eyes glowing faintly with the fire's reflection. "Not all who seek truth will find comfort," she told a weary traveler, "but all who hear prophecy will walk with clarity, even through sorrow." To a king who demanded assurance of victory in war, she said, "The flame shows not what you desire." And to a mother who asked if her child would live through the winter, she answered gently, "Yes, and he will carry your kindness farther than you dream." Each prophecy struck deep, not because it promised joy, but because it revealed truth. His voice carried across Delphi. "This fire is not mine alone. It belongs to the Titaness Phoebe, who gave radiance when gods and mortals alike wandered in shadow. It belongs to those who seek truth, even when it burns. It belongs to you, who will carry its light into the world." The crowd bowed, their hearts lifted. In that moment, Apollo made a vow. "As long as I draw breath, I will guard this flame. Not for Olympus, nor for glory, but for the truth that endures beyond all silence." The flame flared, silver and gold entwined, as if sealing his oath. The oracle's words echoed across generations, shaping kings and poets, wanderers and warriors. And always, in the quiet crackle of the fire, Phoebe's presence lingered. Her radiance did not fade with time, it became time itself, a constant thread woven into the tapestry of fate. The Titaness of Radiance had not vanished in defeat. She had transcended, leaving behind not ruins, but an eternal legacy. For as long as mortals sought guidance, and as long as gods remembered their duty, the flame of Delphi would burn, an immortal reminder that prophecy was not power over others, but light upon the path. Epilogue. Stars above Delphi. One evening, Apollo and Artemis stood together upon the cliffs of Parnassus, watching the flame from afar. The night sky shimmered, stars glittering like silver dust. "Do you see her?" Artemis asked softly. Apollo smiled. "Every night, the stars are her crown, the flame is her heart, and Delphi is her voice." High above, the constellation shimmered Phoebe's eternal sign, a reminder that even the most ancient Titans had left more than battle scars. Some had left light, and beneath that starlit sky, mortals whispered their prayers, the eternal flame answering in silence, in truth, and in radiance everlasting.